Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another very exciting Star Wars news update. It is I, your favourite galactic hostess, Star Wars Meg, and later in the video, I have a special treat, a guest. You might remember him from my Acolyte coverage, a good friend of the channel. We talk about the state of the fandom, why fans are pretty apathetic, about Skeleton Crew, and some predictions. But first, some very intriguing news. Star Wars just confirmed what the showrunners have been talking about, the connection between Skeleton Crew and the Jedi of the Old Republic. In a brand new TV spot, we see Wim and Neel engaging in a pretend, friendly lightsaber fight. The showrunners commented on this and said, when the kids are out of school, all they want to do is pretend to be Jedi. Now we know that Atatin, their planet, was once considered the crown jewel of the Old Republic, and as such, at school they're taught about the legends of the Sith Wars, the Jedi of the Old Republic, and the obstacles they had to face. To them, the Jedi are legends. They say it's almost like studying their theology. The Jedi are mythologized, and so when they think Jodnar Narwood's character is a Jedi, they get very excited, but as I covered in a previous video, I don't think he is. And I guess one of the biggest mysteries to me is why the Old Republic, capital O, and not the Republic that was crumbled by Palpatine, replaced by the Empire. Are they in a very specific part of the galaxy, which is almost unaffected by the major political events of recent decades? Like I say, maybe there's a reason everyone is so excited by the name Atatin. Maybe the planet itself is one of mystery and treasure. Now, while this is being touted as a kids show, there are certainly a lot of mature themes. And personally, I'm very intrigued to find out why the Jedi link is so important. If their planet is isolated, and they're not as familiar with the New Republic and the heroes of Endor, they might not be aware of the likes of Luke Skywalker, which is pretty astonishing, considering he's a contemporary Jedi legend. These two shots got me very excited, because while they're reenacting the Jedi fights of old, they don't know what a lightsaber sounds like. They've never encountered a real one. These are just toys. In other major Skeleton Crew news, we now have the runtimes for the first 2 episodes. They both drop at the same time on December 3rd, and collectively, they're 76 minutes in length, about 38 each. But remember guys, that's including credits, so let's say about 29 to 30. It is a shame, live-action Star Wars shows don't want to do longer runtimes, but I suppose it's fine for a kids show, a show aimed at families. Another really big update, the creators of the show explains that while Neel is not an Ortolan, they knew very well they were running into this problem, that fans would assume he is the same species as Max Rebo, but he's not. Jon Watts says, quote, "People really want to know, and we don't mind going on record and saying he's not. Obviously we drove right into that controversy, we went right in and did it, but there are a lot of blue, trunked elephant creatures out there in the Star Wars universe." And he jokes, it's a very human-centric assumption. But you know my dear friends, while I've had theories for this show, and while I've discussed it in great depth, it must be said that Star Wars fans are pretty apathetic about it. There is just no real hype. Can you blame us? After the Acolyte, Star Wars has taken so many L's. So while Skeleton Crew might be fun, I'm standing by my prediction. I don't think it's going to do well in terms of viewership. And I've got a bit of a hot take. I just don't think Star Wars fans can look past the Earth-like feel of this show. Yes, they tried to sci-fi it up, but I don't think it's screaming Star Wars to a lot of fans. And especially after some of the press tour, hearing some of the creatives talk about it, some of the things they said, ironically they think it's supposed to push boundaries by giving it more of a familiar Earth-like aesthetic. I think it has the opposite effect. I'm looking forward to break this show down and all of that, but I can understand why people are a bit frustrated. It might sound really blunt to word it like this, but a good portion of fans just ain't buying the hype anymore. There are of course still fans who are tuned in. I'm gonna watch the show for example, but despite putting out teaser after teaser after teaser, the response after a lot of disappointments is pretty tepid. And to discuss this subject and some more theories we have, our good friend Matt Rissman. The last time we spoke, it was The Acolyte, and we had a lot of criticisms of episodes 7 and 8. And now we're excited for Skeleton Crew. This is a show I think we're both really looking forward to.
It's gonna sound a little bit silly, but I just want it to be fun. And I know they've used that word a lot in the marketing and in the interviews and all that stuff. But I mean, I found the Acolyte to be a bit of a drag. And so I'm just excited for what seems to be sort of the whimsy. I think the last time we were together, we talked about this, right? About sort of the whimsical elements of Star Wars sort of being missing in some of these recent things that they've done. And they certainly seem to be leaning into that in these little teaser spots we're getting for Skeleton Crew.
I'm very excited. You sit at the cross section of hopeful fandom and critical fandom. Do you think fans care about this show? And where does the apathy come from?
They haven't done a great job hooking folks along. And by that I mean keeping the fandom engaged and excited. Because again, in my humble opinion, some of the more recent projects have been a little rockier than I think we would have hoped. And where I think it's really challenging now, Skeleton Crew, is what people we should remind ourselves, this show has been done for a long time now. Right? They were working on this quite a while ago. I mean, this idea comes from many years ago, and it's a crew of very talented directors and writers, and of course, Jude Law and the children actors. And I think it's a series that's made with a lot of love and made by what we would consider to be real fans of the franchise. And I think the series is coming out at a time where we're at a pretty much an all-time low, I think, for fan engagement, right? We haven't had a movie in so long. The Disney Plus shows haven't been great. Everything keeps getting announced and canceled, all of that stuff. And now here we go with what I think could be a little gem of a show, but more broadly, I'm just not seeing it.
And I've seen generally the fandom say, well, why should we care about this show? They're not going to take risks like in The Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett. We have some new teasers and new TV spots, and I've been dying to get your opinion on 2 frames, which actually prove something which Chris Ford and Jon Watts teased was going to be in the show, and that is the kids' knowledge of the Jedi, the Old Republic, and them pretend fighting with lightsabers. What do you make of this, and how do you think the show's going to address the Jedi past?
It's so interesting to me when I saw this, and then the noises they make are not quite the right noises, right? Because I think they've heard stories of the Jedi, they know intrinsically or descriptively what a lightsaber is, but they've never seen one in person, right? So it looks very rough and it's approximate. And it made me think a little bit more about the scene we saw in one of the original trailers when they're all sitting in the schoolroom and having a lesson. Now I wonder what they're being taught, right? If this world is the jewel of the Old Republic and sort of stuck in time, if you will, from a particular time, it's probably a very different school experience than when we saw Grogu in the school in Navarro, right, where they were clearly being taught about the New Republic and the broader galaxy. This here, these children in this world, I wonder what they're being taught, and then again, from what era do they know the Jedi? I mean, I wouldn't imagine they would know Luke Skywalker, right? I mean, their Jedi stories, I would guess, have to be from a time gone by. So very interesting, and it's one of those things where I think this is either going to work really, really well, or it's not going to work at all, right? So I'm hoping this concept of them knowing of the Jedi and sort of the vision they have and how they're acting it out and having that be a part of their own, lore, if you will, within universe. I don't think we've ever really seen that before. So I'm just hoping, I'm hoping on hope that the story makes it work, because I think it's a wonderful idea personally.
Do you know what I'm worried about? If this is a nothing burger. If they don't do anything beyond just acknowledging the planets being an Old Republic gem, and the kids maybe know about the Jedi, and that's the extent of it. We know they're going to trust Jod Narnarwood, but we don't know anything about him. There are theories he's a Jedi, or some kind of Force user, maybe a Sith. I'm just worried that they're doing this for the visual kind of Easter eggs more than a meaningful story.
I'm with you there as well, and so part of what I think they're doing here is, again, so that when they do encounter Jod and they start to see him using the Force, in one way, we saw him grabbing the key, but then in another way he does like a major Force push, or he's grabbing something happens that said to me, I'm like, all right, he knows He isn't a rusty one necessarily. He's just choosing when to use the Force and when not to. But they're going to then attribute, I think, their version or their view of what a Jedi is to when they encounter him. And then I think we're going to see him sort of trying to fit into what that looks like, I think, to continue their trust. I mean, people have seen the first 3 episodes, right? The first 3 episodes were sent out in screeners. I haven't been able to find a peep from anyone, except a couple of people in interviews talking broadly about what they experienced in the first 3 episodes. And apparently the way the series starts is quite something to see from a Jod's character perspective. But I can't find anything about what's really going on here. And so they've kept that so close to the vest.
Did you hear what Jude Law said about a female friend? And it might tease Mars Kanata.
I think it would be, you see, this is another case where I think it would be awesome, right? It would feel, to me, that would feel organic, right? Some might say, oh, here they go again, shoehorning sequels era characters, into this story just because. Well, would it be just because? I mean, she would fit. So would Sid, right? We were trying to figure out, is Sid still alive? I think she may be, right? I mean, but there are, and of course it could be some other female character completely, separately that we have no knowledge of at all, right? But all these things would feel to me very organic, which otherwise I think is going to be a very self-contained kind of story.
If they do Sid, that is directly Dave Filoni inserting something. And I was thinking about this, every single Mandoverse show has a cameo, something we didn't expect from known Star Wars media. Hondo to me makes the most sense, if I had to put money on it.